Well, welcome all. Thank you everyone for coming and joining this sustainability drop-in. We'd start by acknowledging that we are gathering on the lands of the Palawa peoples across La Truida, Tasmania, and also on the lands of the Gadigal people from the Eora Nation. When we gather and acknowledge country, it seems so important to be acknowledging that the wisdom of the peoples of this island of La Truida, the Gadigal lands, stewarded their environment for tens of thousands of years sustainably, ensuring that it created an extraordinary quality of life for its human and non-human inhabitants. And it was viable for a very, very long time. We have much wisdom to learn and acquire. So anything we say today, we always say with a lot of humility. We are really at the foothills compared to a people who really reached the summit of sustainability, of creating a civilization that genuinely lasts sustainably. We are at the absolute foothills of that journey, but we know the journey matters, and the fact that our peoples have managed to do it should inspire us every day. So as we kind of come to this sustainability kind of conversation, we thought it was a useful thing as we come to a sort of the back end of the year, both to look back about where we've come this year, so that we can be very conscious of all the work that we're building on, of the story that is unfolding, that everyone across the university is a part of. And I'll do a little of that. And then Corey will take us to look forward where we're heading as we continue to build our momentum around being one of the lighthouses for the planet as a university. We are already that in one way, but we're keen to be that right across the sustainability agenda. So if we start with where we're at and that desire to make sure that we are setting a real benchmark for what universities can do when they're driving a true sustainability agenda. We have, as many of you would know, used the STARS tracking, or the Sustainability Tracking Assessment and Rating System, to inform and monitor the way in which we set about our sustainability task. The terrific things about that is it's, of course, got a very holistic nature. It's built around the SDGs, and they are really our organising framework to give us the breadth of sustainability. It has transparency, so there is a real accountability to it, and it is appropriately aspirational, and it encourages and pushes us to the next level. We have been very actively pursuing that, and if you see where we were in 2020, to have made a nearly 25 percentage point increase over just 2 years, extraordinary achievement by so many people, because this is a very holistic tool. This is about everybody, doing an enormous amount about the kind of work we do as a university, how we engage community, and of course, how we actually operate. Our goal is by 2025 to be one of that tiny number of institutions around the world which is absolutely setting the benchmark. And Corey will talk about our next steps on that journey. But I think really worth reflecting on when we put our minds to it, what it is possible to achieve, because it's a huge shift, and there are a few places that manage to achieve in the sustainability space such a shift in such a period of time. So to all who got us there, a big thanks. But it is accountability and transparency matters in the sustainability space, as we know. The other thing which is, I think, always helpful is to the recognition of where we are kind of really innovating and doing the kind of things that keep us at the forefront. It's good to know where we're actually getting to, and the Green Gown Awards that were a real mark of that. In fact, we got the Sustainability Institution of the Year last year. I think absolutely spoke to the collective agenda that people across the university, students, staff, broader actually university community coming together to achieve something pretty remarkable in our part of the world, because happily there are a good number of other Australian, New Zealand institutions that also share our values in being very committed in this space. And was just a little conscious when we when you pick somebody out, there's a sense that you do this to compete, and you don't. It is never a matter of pride that you come first. It's a matter of pride that peers recognize you as pushing the boundaries and innovating. And that's the way I kind of see these, is it's the value of being in the peer conversation and of pushing the boundaries, because we have, and I said at the start, we are at the foothills. We are at the foothills. So when you kind of come first, in a sense, it is first when you're really still a long way off. But it is encouraging. And I think we want to feel very encouraged about that, and encouraged about the richness of conversation with our peers that's creating. The fact that the CIPS program was so well recognised, I think, speaks so importantly to our commitment that students are at the centre. They are the future. They are the future leaders. These are the crew that will play such an important part of the next 25 years of transforming our world. There's probably never a more important generation of students for the planet than this one. These are the ones they're the students whose professional careers will shape it, and it's the job of those of us a little further down their careers to ensure we are doing all we can to support everything to enable that generation, as well as making our own efforts, can truly transform the planet. So when we've got students, the kind of programs helping our students be equipped for that future, it's terrific. And then the waste minimisation piece. I think the real key here is we do not get a better planet until we have a circular economy, until we disconnect how we are creating wealth on the planet from the destruction of it, what we take out of it, what we put back into it. Until we disconnect that, the planet is in peril. So every step we make towards actually ensuring that we are creating that circular economy is unbelievably important to the long-term sustainability of the planet. So the fact this is encouraging us, that we're heading in the right direction, and we, of course, have so much more to do. Every time I put something in that bin that says landfill, I feel a sense of failure, that somehow, how is it that a product that can be recycled ever got into my hand? And I think about the product and think, that's not okay. That's not a waste stream I ever want to use. But it shows how much we've got to do. So, but it's a reminder, and I love the fact those bins are there, kind of talking to us every time we put something in. They're like feedback, and I look at how much is in the different bins, and I feel it's like organisational feedback. And I have to say, I do get happy when I see that there is less and less in the landfill bin and more in the other bins. But we should all take it as organisational feedback. Every time you look at that, see it as a score, and it's a minus score, everything that is in the red bin. Deduct from your sense of a good score. And then I think these other awards, which are, I think, again, calling out such important things. I mean, the diploma and certificate in sustainable living, one of the things that matters so much is that we change how we live, and the planet only gets saved if we change how we build, what we eat, how we travel, all of the kind of full breadth of things, and how we think, how we are community. And we know that requires a massive educational task. And the team who have created our diploma and the certificate within it, amazing, just exceptional. And the uptake of it, I think, speaks for itself. There's just a hunger in our part of the world and a hunger in the planet for that kind of knowledge. The Curious Climate program is so important, just so important for that broader community education. It needs to happen at every level, not just those at tertiary level, but those in schools. And I think particularly in an empowering way, we need to create a sense of hope, not despair, that actually the actions of kids and all of us can actually make a real contribution, because we have to create a generation where hope animates action. We can't have a world of despair. And so people feeling informed and enriched makes a real difference, and such a wonderful, important kind of work that colleagues have been doing. And back to that student leaders piece, it does take leaders, champions, people who are really ready to kind of step up and Eve, who I notice also recently got a Monash scholarship. So big congratulations to her. Her leadership's been recognised on multiple fronts, and we want to celebrate that, because we unquestionably need leadership, people who will change the direction. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Eve. And again, it is this holistic piece, and rankings, again, there's all sorts of issues with rankings. But one of the things I do like about the Times Higher Ed impact rankings is it requires you to attend, calls your attention to this wide range of things that constitute sustainability. You can have all sorts of discussions about methodologies, but what matters is that it is just giving us a systemic framework to do it, and to where others are doing really well, to invite the question, what are they doing? How can we learn from them? Just as people reach out to us and say, how can we learn from you? I think this is a scheme by which it helps us understand who do we learn from, and be a resource for others to learn from. And if we move around in the rankings because somebody's learned a lot from us and leapfrogs us, we should celebrate that and say, well done. That's great, and we should get out there and make sure we're learning. The sustainability journey is an outward-looking journey, not an inward-looking journey. It's constantly got to be that way, and this is a way in which we have that. And I know some incredibly rich conversations have been happening in all directions thanks to this, and I think it's a real testament to Australia that there are so many Australian universities on the top of this pile. So important, given the kind of nature of our continent, that we do that. But it should be nevertheless a matter of some pride that we've done enough of that learning, that we kind of get to this kind of point. No small thing on any scheme to be in the top 100 in the world, let alone the top 25. So it's a really impressive thing for any institution to do there. So it's well done across the board. The other thing is, and there are those bins, but it's a visible focus, and it kind of matters that it's visible. What I think that outwardly reflects is our inward beliefs, the things we're trying to do. But it kind of, if you weren't seeing it, the world physically changing around us, you would be worried that we were not actually making the changes deep, because in the end, the way organisations, indeed our whole society works, will look different. People will travel differently. They'll use different products. Food will come from different places. We will be a different kind of community. So I think as a university whose job it is to pioneer the future, we should be expecting, and if we're not seeing it, asking, why are we not seeing the future arriving now? And that's constantly kind of a question that I'm keen that we collectively ask. Why is the future not here now? Why are we not seeing it? And of course, what can I do about it? The thing that you can pick up in a bunch of those pictures is there's just a real range of staff, students, who are making that future happen. It's a collective whole of community change. And these are just some very nice visible things as we get those sustainable choices, circular economy, zero carbon transport kind of happening. And then there are things where we can exercise influence in both directions, out of the university, but also those who we work with. The fact we've donated a whole lot of devices is really important, not just to environmental, but also social sustainability as we tackle the inequalities that unfortunately continue to grow around the planet and in our community. But also ensuring that we are working with those who we engage with to push them in our direction. That's where ensuring that we are, using less power in the products that we're getting, and pushing really hard to get this plastic packaging out of our kind of supply chains. It's kind of really outrageous that it's there, but the fact the team are putting so much effort into putting the hard word on our suppliers to drag them into it, and we're big enough to have some influence. But it's determined, and I thank all the colleagues who kind of carry those conversations sometimes to organisations that aren't yet on the program. So thanks to everyone who kind of pushes those. And I think our IT crew have done a number of things, impressively to exercise their leverage. And I want to thank them particularly for the kind of supply chain work that they've been doing to help in this space. And then in our projects, which are they are setting benchmarks for how we can build sustainably, and there are just some of the pictures of those things here. As you know, we have publicly talked about setting now well more than 30% lower carbon buildings than the benchmark reference points in our northern buildings. The forestry building will exceed 40% less carbon than any reference building. So we are really, the idea of building a zero carbon building is I think well and truly within our ambitions now. It requires the next level of revolution, but we've proved what's possible here. And so there you can see the recycled gas pipelines that are used for piles. They're kind of going in Launceston. The use of recycled materials to create the kind of the surface in the car parks. Obviously, the use of low carbon, locally sourced timbers, really important. And then the broader sustainability agenda. There would be few university campuses anywhere in the world that put community gardens at the heart of a campus, because we have to tackle the food inequality issues that are kind of rife, and change our relationship to food. And we are doing that very boldly and clearly as part of our agenda. And then all of the ways in which the buildings are kind of well managed in the kind of passive solar ways. I'd also say that there's not just for us, but one of the things that's been super interesting is industry has learned to build in new ways. So one of the things that's now happening in the north of the state is the builders who worked on this building have taken that technology of how to build low carbon buildings, and other people are using it. So the St. Luke's Hospital building, that is the design of that and how that's been approached has come out because we've introduced a kind of new to Tasmania ways in which we can build, and created a series of contractors and suppliers who can actually build low carbon buildings. So we bring industry and the community with us when we're able to use our scale in these sustainability ways, part of how we have impact. So I'm going to hand over to Corey to talk about the way forward. So thanks very much, Corey.
Thanks for that, Rufus. And just so everyone knows, Rufus will be still on the call when we get to the Q&A session. So feel free to interrogate him away. This is one of his favorite topics. So I'm sure he has lots of other things he'd like to share. I kept it very short. Sorry, Rufus. So my section is the looking forward. And just I'm going to go through the variety of tools and approaches that we use to build on the successes that Rufus was covering. And just to acknowledge that those successes are not just the past year, but have been really building up over the last 5 years in particular. And it's a way in which we want to empower our students and staff, as well as our partners, to contribute to more sustainable outcomes. So this is all very much about how you, the people on the call and those watching this later, can contribute and participate. And that is what we are all about. Sustainability is not done through Rufus's office or my team. Sustainability is all of us making the right choices and the changes that need to happen. And make sure I get on the right. There we go. So just to quickly go over, we use a survey. So we do biennial surveys of our staff and students. And this is where we find out what that community says, what they think about how we're doing overall, and then give us some indications about what we need to focus on. So while we have been improving since 2018, as you can see in this slide from staff feedback, we do still have a long way to go. I want that 6.48 in 2 years' time to be over 8 would be a really good outcome to show that our community thinks we are actually doing as well as we should be doing. And that is just remembering that we all will be participating in that. We can only be as sustainable as everybody in the organization. So I'll just go to the next slide. So one of the things we wanted to focus on, as I said, is, what could the university do better? So it's a big, long survey. I'm only pulling out a few things here. And this one, really does focus in on environmental sustainability and what we could be doing better, with some acknowledgement that we need to do a bit more on embedding sustainability in our curriculum. So what that says to me is, this is great, and I can take some leadership space to continue to pursue these things, but we obviously need to do a little bit more engagement around our holistic sustainability agenda so that everybody really understands that sustainability is not just environmental, as important as that is, it's sociocultural, it is financial, it's all of that that comes together, which is why we use the SDGs as a framework, because they are so holistic. So in time, I would like some other things to be coming up and be recognized that we could do a bit more effort on, as well as recognizing where we are doing some amazing things. We also use, as Rufus said, we use the STARS rating, so that's Sustainability Assessment Rating System. And what we do is we use that as a gap analysis tool. It's a celebration tool as well, which is what you're seeing in this slide. So in black are all the available credits per category and per activity area. And then the gray, which is a platinum color, is where we've already more or less been achieving platinum level activity. So what is happening in those spaces, those people are already doing platinum level activities, which is, really, really impressive. And then gold is obviously where we're at a gold level. What we do is we then look at this and go, okay, where are we not achieving gold and platinum already? Because we have that platinum overall ambition by 2025. Where do we need to focus on co-designed initiatives? Who in the university do we need to work with? And all of us working together to co-design initiatives that will address that to just up our performance in those spaces. So that's all this slide is telling you, is that, we need to do additional work in a number of areas. There's a little bit more to do in curriculum, as we know. There's a little bit more to do in our operational space. I feel like planning administration and with Rufus's support and the other senior executive, we've really come a long way. And then engagement, there's a bit more activity in that space. So you'll be seeing a lot more of that over the next 2 years as well. And then, as Rufus said, we use the Times Higher Education impact ranking to also do a bit of gap analysis to identify, where do we feel that we could do just that little bit better to ensure that, we are delivering the outcomes that we want to deliver around climate action in particular, is the example I've put here. So there's 4 activity areas in that climate action piece that gets assessed by Times Higher Education. And research, low carbon energy use, environmental education, and carbon neutrality are there. So, we sort of have the carbon neutrality thing done, being one of only 2 certified carbon neutral universities in Australia. We have been since 2016. We were the second to do so. Make sure that we maintain that, and that there's some activity happening in that space, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Environmental education, Rufus already covered off on some amazing Green Gown Awards that we won. So the Curious Climate Tasmania is a big part of that. And an example that we put up, the Climate Futures group that does a lot of research and modeling for us is put up because they go out and share that with decision makers in our community. Low carbon energy use, we're pretty excited about that because we are pursuing generating more of our own renewable power. Despite we are in Tasmania and we have a predominant renewable grid, we want to do just that little bit more and contribute to that more global approach to low to zero carbon energy use. And then nearly everybody on this call would know that we are pretty much leaders in the research space around climate action. We can do a bit more in that space, and so we are focusing on that within the research division and some of our other mission activities. So what can you do? There's some things you can do around carbon. Travel smart, reduce your number of flights you take, and you reduce your ground travel, share rides, make each trip count with multiple outcomes, and just start to think about how you can value add onto your activities in that space. So, as Rufus was saying, using the bins as a way to kind of gauge how we're going as a self-assessment. Think about your own carbon footprint around travel and waste management and energy use as well, because that all does contribute. We also then wanted to ensure that we are place-based, but we want to be globally relevant as well, and we want to participate within the sector and outside the sector in coming up with the big solutions and be globally relevant. So we have joined the Race to Zero for universities and colleges, which I'll talk about our emissions reduction in a minute, but it is all about your climate action again and your emissions reduction. We've also joined the CANI Climate Accord, and that has, I think there's 75 different commitments that a university can make. We have made 59 of them across a whole range of activities. So feel free to just go online and look for the CANI Accord, and University of Tasmania is the first one to sign up in Australia, which is pretty exciting. And we have some really good commitments in it. We're working very closely with our international people and teams to basically go through those commitments one by one and identify how we're going to pursue those. The newest one, which is about to launch, we're a founding member of the Nature Positive Universities Network, which is pretty exciting. And that's recognizing, much like Race to Zero recognizes the climate emergency, the Nature Positive Universities Network recognizes the biodiversity emergency. And we want it to be very much at the forefront of that. It's what we're known for as a university in many ways, is our environmental research and education. From management through to base level research as well. So we have signed up to that. There'll be a big launch and an announcement around that. And then the university will also be responding with our own natural space management action plan that will identify exactly what we're going to be doing and how you can all contribute to that. And then I won't go through this in detail, but just as you would expect in a giant organization such as ourselves, you need to identify what are your action plans, what are your strategies, make sure they're living documents, and hone in on things that need to get done. So we have everything in there around emissions reduction, which has a 50% emissions reduction on our gross emissions, importantly, by 2030, transport strategy, waste minimization. So all those environmental things are in there. But then we also are looking at those other things around catering principles, Aboriginal engagement, our well-being framework, our green bond framework, which ties in our environmental outcomes to our financial outcomes, and then those design requirements that Rufus was talking about in his slide on what we've been doing at Inverasca and how that's informing our additional activities in the built space in particular. But how do you drive those? How do you make sure those actions are happening? Well, you have to have targets, and we do have targets across a number of the environmental areas. So carbon emissions, as I've said, that 50% reduction in gross emissions, and that involves some serious emissions reduction across the emissions that carbon comes from within the university. So that's our energy use, our business travel, staff commuting, natural gas, and waste are the big ones. And as you can see there, natural gas, we essentially want to be an all-electric university. So by 2030, we want to make sure we're at least an 85% reduction, if not 95% reduction in natural gas use, and move on from that being a transition fuel because we can be electric. Construction, as Rufus said, we've been achieving over 30% forestry. I think he commented that it's going to be probable over 40% reduction. But we do have a minimum of a 20% requirement, and that is just a minimum. And we tell our designers, we really want you to double that. Waste we've covered, and then transport. We want more people using sustainable transport options, both staff and students. And then we obviously, I'm not going to go into this slide in detail, but just show you that we do have dashboards where we track all of these things. So the data might be coming in weekly, it might be coming in monthly, quarterly, annually, and we track all of that to see how we're actually going on that 50% reduction target on emissions, because it actually encompasses so many other things under it. So it's a very methodologically driven process to get these emissions reductions and be able to track them and find out where we're finding hurdles and how we address those. So some of the things specifically that we are doing and that you can contribute and participate in by choices you make. So I've already said we want to be an all-electric university. So we're looking at more renewable energy, both on our buildings, so behind the meter, as well as potential for power purchase agreements, having our own solar farms, what have you. So all of that is very live at the moment, and hopefully we'll have a lot more clarity on that over the next couple of months, and then we'll be able to let you know our specific actions in energy. Transport, we will have full passenger vehicle fleet electrification by 2024. I know that our folks within ISD are pushing this very, very hard, and we already have a number of electric vehicles that have come in. And I just will point out, we were the first fleet back in 2015 in Tasmania to have electric vehicles. So we sort of are pushing the boundaries in Tasmania, and we're pushing that fleet electrification as well. We will be installing a lot more electric charging infrastructure for cars, bikes, and motorcycles. If you don't know, we do have electric motorcycle charging at the Hobart City Apartments on every level of that car park. Bike charging is available in all of our end-of-trip facilities. And then there's charging infrastructure on all of our campuses, but look for lots more coming up there. We will be launching the Lyft Tango rideshare scheme in 2023, and that will be used both for internal between campuses, but also commuting for staff and students to our campuses. And it is in use by a number of other universities. It's a really neat platform. Have a look. We will expand the Flexi Rent car share program. So we have been running that for a number of years on the Sandy Bay campus, and I want to say, and in the city of Hobart, in our facilities there. And we're looking to expand that potentially to the north as well. And our partner there and our local councils are been watching very carefully how that has been rolling out, because they would like to see those to be citywide eventually. Waste, one of our big issues, and we really need your help on this, is we need to reduce contamination. So as Rufus said, he looks at each bin. There's hopefully very clear signage on the bin and near the bin. Please do put things in the right bin, because what happens is that you get contamination and then the cleaners have to put it into landfill. And that gives this horrible feedback loop of that people see it and go, oh, it's all going to landfill anyway. And so therefore they don't pay attention anymore. It does matter. Things can go to the right place if people use the right bin. So please focus on your contamination. And then, like I said, we're doing other emissions management activities. So we're looking at self-generating our own carbon sequestration projects to maintain our carbon neutrality. We're implementing a pilot internal carbon price to drive emissions reduction. So College of Business and Economics, Q Division, and Rufus's office area will also be participating in that pilot, and then rolling that out more fully in the year after. And I've already talked about the embodied carbon reduction, as has Rufus. So just two final slides I think we're down to, and then we'll go to Q&A. We do know from our sustainability surveys of staff and students that we do have a food security issue for our students in particular, but staff as well. And we are working on a sustainable food systems action plan with academics and professional staff and TUSA across all activity areas. So we'll be looking at a whole range of things, from emergency food relief, which these things are happening. We're not just waiting for a plan. Some of these, we're pulling it together so we're not overlapping and we can be more efficient in our activities, through to our community gardens, et cetera. And students can start growing a lot more of their own food, et cetera. As Rufus said, Inverresc is a very good example of that, but we do have community gardens in the south as well, and in the northwest. And so then final slide is just, I've been kind of covering it all the way through. There are lots of opportunities for you to get involved, both staff and students. There's internal opportunities. We do run a green impact engagement program for staff and students. It's used across the sector by, I want to say 12 or 13 universities in Australasia, but all over the UK as well. And that's getting a whole new user interface next year. So it's going to be even more fun to use it than the old interface. You can get involved in the education sustainability community of practice. Rufus has already talked about SIPs, so there's a lot of opportunities in there for student internships, but staff mentor roles as well. So staff, if you have ideas, you want to help work with students doing sustainability across all things financial, sociocultural, or environmental, contact us. Students for Sustainability Network, so every college has representatives on that. We have sustainability committee working groups, campus sustainability tours. So there's one online that you can go do self-paced. We also occasionally run them, invited along, and it's an actual physical tour with a group of people. We have sustainability podcasts and web pages. We'll be getting a whole new presence on the internet soon on the UTAS website. And then of course our partner TUSA has lots of societies and clubs as well that you can sign up for. And then looking more externally, there's communities model days of service, there's Education Sustainability Tasmania, you get involved in their activities. The UN SDG Network Tasmania, we do facilitate that through my team. And then colleges have lots and lots of things that they do on their own. And then we are often host organization for conferences, whether that's Australasian Campuses Towards Sustainability, so that's the local regional one, through to ASHE, SDSN, and EAUC, which are sort of sister organizations on other continents. And we make sure we're a host organization so we can have hundreds of people sign up without physically having to go. They still have access to all of that. So please, if you have any questions about any of these things, reach out to sustainability.utas@utas.edu.au or directly to me or any of my team. So I think we'll go over to Q&A now, which means what I will do, Rufus, is you and I will be on the big screen. I'll take this down. And we'll start to look through the chats that are coming up. I'll stop sharing. Although if people want me to bring a slide up, do let me know. So if we can get people to put in their chat, or if you want, put your hand up, by all means, we'd love to hear you speak as well and have a little discussion. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Rufus.
There's some good questions here about the composting bins. Might be worth picking up a little, unpacking that a little for people. Where do they all go and what can really go in them?
Yep, so let me just catch up here. So for the university, and we have in our catering model, have said to anybody who wants to serve food on our campuses, they must serve it in compostable containers. So anything you buy at a university catering outlet should go in the green bin, the green lidded bin, just be clear, the green lidded bin. And that should be good. In the South as well, in Hobart proper, it should be able to go into the compostable. In other areas, if you bring it in from off campus, make sure you have a look. If it says compostable, put it in the green bin. If it says biodegradable, put it into landfill bin. If it says recyclable, put it into the yellow bin. I hope that's clear enough. Oh, and tea bags, please just put them in landfill unless you know specifically the bag comes from a company that doesn't have microplastics in the bag, because most of them do. And we have Kirsten Bradley with a raised hand. Go ahead, Kirsten. Kirsten's hand is up. No, okay, we'll go. Okay, we'll look through. Let's see, what have we got here? Yep, we will be sharing the PowerPoint slides, as Catherine said. What else do we have? Uni Hopper, great service, hybrid electric vehicle option. Yes, that is very much on a wish list for us. So we are working on that with the contractor and with our servicing. So that's contracts negotiations are mid-process. So by you asking that question helps reinforce that those are the sorts of things we want to see from our providers. So thank you for asking that one. Recorders, Rufus, you have something?
Well, there's probably a couple on the city move here, Corey, be worth picking up on. Might give you this first one around from Amit. Is there a plan to accommodate the scattered schools to reduce the carbon footprint? Perhaps I picked that up. Okay. Yeah, so I think one of the big things we know will come with the city move, and there are a couple of great questions here from Amit and Antonia. It will the per staff and per student kind of carbon footprint will be dramatically lower, because yes, we will be making much greater use of space, and those spaces will be very low carbon kind of spaces. So it will reduce the carbon footprint greatly, and our aim is to have entirely kind of carbon-free transport between all aspects of the campus, whether that's walking, because 90% of people will be within walking distance of anything that they need to go, but also putting us in, as we know from our students and staff already in the city, much higher use of the existing bike networks, which would see enhanced significantly by our presence there. So should dramatically reduce the carbon footprint of both within campus and to campus travel. Then this question on the social sustainability side and the food side. On the social sustainability side, a really important part of this is actually continuing to tackle the housing affordability piece. So we know that the next set of housing we need to be doing has to be kind of helping tackle create a lower price point so that housing is more affordable. But we also know, and TUSA are kind of taking a bit of a lead here, having a central location where we can actually do food, address some of the food kind of needs better, both in direct distribution, but also this, how do we create productive gardens in the city? So we're definitely very interested in this question of how do we get the community garden project that we're obviously piloting in Launceston, and that'll be a great thing in itself. And as we learn from that, working out the way in which we kind of best do that in the city, a range of locations where that could happen, from being integrated to city buildings to using actually our site on the domain, which is incredible. Has some incredible opportunities to be a very beautiful place for the sustainability agenda. So I think we do very much see the city move right across the SDGs as making sure we are systematically actually able to go after as many of those as possible. And the other thing which we have talked about on the city move is really making sure we're moving to a very circular economy in how we set about all of the things we're doing. We really like to be getting to a point where we're eliminating those red bins, because everything that we're utilising on campus belongs to a kind of circular structure. That's certainly the aspiration. But yeah, a couple of very great questions there. Thank you.
Thanks, Rufus. I also see Kirsten's having mic issues. So compostable waste. So we in the south and the northwest, that is a contracted service through our waste contractor, and so some of that would be going up to McRobbie's Gully, into the city of Hobart's big giant composting rows that they use. Up north at Inverest, we have actually installed the first sort of precinct level composting machine that is taking waste from Blue Cafe and our facilities up there, and will increasingly take that. And I know if Jeff McClintock's online, he's our community garden coordinator. He's also been working with accommodation services and introduced the compost caddy, so students can get a little groovy caddy for their rooms, and then when that's full of organic waste, compostable waste, they can bring it down, and then it goes into that machine. And so what comes out of that is composted materials rather, that then is used on the gardens and the landscaping. So as Rufus is saying, it's all part of that circular economy approach. Next one. Jeff, are you online? Because there's a question from Karen Hall about supporting engagement with the community gardens at Inveresk. And she is hoping to use them for teaching as a creative arts public program in 2023. Karen.
Yeah, I've already been in touch with Jeff, and he's been amazingly supportive. So I think that's going to be wonderful. I guess, you know, I'm just feeling like that's at the moment, apart from being in contact with Jeff, it's quite isolating. And I wonder whether, you know, how do we build communities of practice where, you know, my teaching and potentially research that engages with the community gardens might be connecting up with work done by other staff in other schools that I'm not aware of. So I'm just wondering how we make the communication flows better, and so that it moves from being ad hoc initiatives by one staff member to being something that can be sustained long term and that is really supported. That was all.
No, that's wonderful, and I really appreciate the question. So the idea is, I mean, as you know, the gardens are very new, and we are still working out some teething issues on them. But the idea very much is that these are about community engagement, that this is about bringing community, both internal community and external community, together into that space and using them in an effective manner. So Jeff is leading these conversations. So that you're in touch with him is fantastic, because what we want to do is have an engagement plan around them that encompasses all the potential users, whether that's Tasmania Institute of Agriculture folks wanting to do research there, to students that want to grow some things for a dinner party they want to have at the end of the year, and they all are joining in to do that. You know, we're working with Louise Wallace in architecture to design up some specific habitecture, you know, to support native species in that space, and installing some of those around the Inverest Gardens. And we very much want it to be a work in progress. Yes, we put a structure there because we needed to start somewhere, but this needs to belong to the community and grow it and evolve it into something that can address all of those things that you brought up. For example, you know, we want to engage a broad section of the community, you know, internally and externally around this space, because it does belong to the community. The Inverest Precinct belongs to the Launceston community and Tasmanian community more broadly. I love going up there. I live in the south. I think it's a fantastic facility. What happened all along that waterfront and riverfront is just phenomenal. And it's partnerships across a lot of different areas. So thanks, Karen. Do reach out to Jeff and make sure we have a meeting where we can talk more in detail. All right, what do we have here?
As while you're in the zone, Corey, there's a question here around, has UTAS considered reusable crockery systems so that we don't need to do so much compostable products, which in themselves, of course, use materials and energy. Where's our thinking on that one at the moment, Corey?
Yeah, that one's harder. We have discussed that with the various caterers, and it is difficult because we don't have a central caterer, and we don't produce all the meals. And so it became a management issue about who's washing it and who's organizing that, because they all have different facilities that they're preparing and washing and what they use behind the scenes. I will take that off to our catering folks, because I know there's some new catering contracting periods coming up, and we can re-engage with that conversation.
I reckon that's a really great next level conversation. I think really good thought there. There's also a question here around incentivizing student, staff, employees for using electric vehicles, which I think is a great question. At the moment we have for electric bikes, there's a kind of scheme that enables you to get them in a more cost-effective way. But beyond that, we don't have any sort of financial incentives. We have very much designed where we put the EV charging stations in to be the premium parking spots, so that if you're driving an EV, you're going to be able to park as close to the front door as, if you like, as possible. And that is the kind of rollout of where we have EV parking on campus, is to absolutely prioritise its locations. But I think, and happily I saw the government's passing its, looks like this legislation will get passed that will see a few $1,000s come off EVs, making them a little bit more affordable. But again, I think this is one of those next kind of evolution pieces about what other things we can do to be supporting that agenda. And a couple of pieces where Corey highlighted the charging for motorbikes. But I think, that's another piece where I think as our campus redesigns go on, we want to be continuing to prioritise the ability to provide those facilities in optimum spots for people. But the broader incentive, we'll keep that as an on-notice topic. We need to ensure when we do that it actually works for people, that it would make a big enough difference, etc. But thanks again, Amit, another really great contribution there. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just do one above that, just noting from Eric Rodriguez, is about smart lighting. So for the last few years, about 4 or 5 at least years now, we have been, everything has to be LED lighting and has to be energy efficient lighting. So all of our new builds, especially, and maybe any refurbishments, and we've retrofitted to LED lights, and they're smarter solutions. So there's lumen sensors, there's motion sensors embedded in them. So over time, you will see more and more of that. It is in our design guidelines as a requirement, and we are slowly but surely getting to all of those things. Let's see, Rufus covered that one.
And this is the current electric bike scheme needs improving. That's good feedback, Becky. If you've got details on that, perhaps you could send them to Corey, so we can just get some facts there to help on that. Corey's one here on this transport thing. What has the university done in the way of talking to the City Council about making Hobart a safer city for cyclists? Passion of yours, I know.
Yeah, very much so. So we as the university are represented on the Hobart Active Travel Committee. We're represented on the Tasmania Bicycle Council, and we work very closely with them to well, we've done in a way what we have direct control over. So end of trip facilities have been delivered into our facilities in the new builds. We've retrofitted them onto various campuses. We've upgraded showers. So we've done our bit at the end and within our campuses. So we've been working with them on identifying those priority routes and how we can make them safer. And there are some things happening in and around our campuses. There's been major upgrades between Inveresk and Newnham over the last few years. The West Tamar Highway was upgraded at our prompting to get a proper crossing over that Mowbray connector that made it safer to connect. Lights on that pathway that kind of weaves its way up the hill. In the south, we've worked with the City of Hobart on there. They were going to pilot an Argyle-Campbell sort of loop with protected bike lanes. So we've been very supportive of that and gave some design thoughts back to them on that. And we're really hoping that they do roll that out. Supportive of the Mole Street crossing lights that went in because a lot of our folks come into the city from South Hobart. And that was just a safer crossing for them, and advocating for a Collins Street dual way separated cycle lane all the way through the CBD that would connect through to our campus connections as well. So we do very much work in that space. It's a work in progress, and we do what we can to influence.
Yeah, I would have to say that I think we're fundamentally very disappointed that the cycling situation is still a kind of life-threatening event for too many people getting around the town. Previous cities I've lived in, I've been able to cycle everywhere, and I can't do that here, and I think it's actually pretty terrible. But yeah, we are very keen to get that better. It's got to be a collective community effort, I reckon.
I can take the next one, Rufus, on the
Yeah,
recycling walls.
Yeah.
Yep, so the Utah's recycling walls. Truth is, we saw it firstly installed in the city of Hobart. There was one in Tasmania. We said, wow, that is fantastic. How can we emulate that? And then we were able to use our reuse program to repurpose old metal filing cabinets and dress them up a bit, and have about 20 of them. Mary, if you're on the line, you can correct me. I think we're up to 20 all around the state, and we have been sharing all of our signage, how we've gone about doing it, where we send the materials. So I know there's a number of businesses that have copied us. Some other councils have taken that on board. Some private apartment complexes have done it. The Commons in Hobart have set one up that looks just like ours. We gave them all the templates and everything. We're all about sharing, and as Rufus said at the beginning, we can all learn from each other. And if there's somebody doing something great, happy to bring it here. If we're doing something great, happy to share.
Corey, there's a question here from Jeremy. You might want to pick up. It's a kind of interesting question about when did the momentum set in?
I've been here over 12 and a half years. So I guess the momentum has been there a little bit, but we had a major step change around 2018. And I think that was a lot to do with student activism and delivering certified carbon neutral approach, working on divestment, ensuring leadership at the university understood the value of this to that group of students, but then future students as well. And it's just gone from there. And of course, success builds on success, and we're all about sharing success. So it's not about my team. It's not about the university. It's not about our senior management. This is about what impacts are we having in a positive way for Tasmania that we can share more broadly. So that at the end of the day, we want a bit of inertia in this. We get the momentum, and let's make sure the inertia keeps carrying us forward.
Thanks for that, Corey. That's inspiring.
Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, what else we got here, Rufus? What is the timeline to complete the rooftops and walls of Utah's buildings and student accommodation, mounting with solar panels to generate energy? Rufus, do you want to comment on that one at all?
Yeah, so right now the kind of our ASD team are looking at the optimum solution for kind of generating solar energy, because in fact, as you kind of may be aware, there are a range of kind of ways of tackling that problem. UQ have just kind of completed a massive solar farm as their solution to it. So there are different ways into this challenge, and so that's what we're looking at the moment. What's the best combination of inputs to the grid? There are some non-trivial kind of challenges. You've got to work with this one. So quite technical challenges that the team are working on so that we can get, as Corey flagged at the beginning, one of our big objectives is to get a lot more renewable energy behind the meter or into our system. Because unfortunately, one of the kind of problems in Tasmania is, although we buy from a system that should be 100% renewable, because of the link to the mainland, in fact, dirty power comes the other way. This is one of my real gripes. Dirty power comes the other way into our system. So when we buy from the Tasmanian grid, we are buying some dirty Victorian power, about 10-15% of it. And that's, in my view, pretty terrible. And you can't buy it clean unless you pay an extra couple of $1 million. You can't buy it clean in a green power state. So there is a real policy problem here, which I have started to actually have conversations with people about, because that seems to me that's just a terrible outcome for Tasmania. Our way around it is, of course, to kind of be engaged in the self-generation game, but there's also a bigger policy issue that we are going at head on, because that is just not where the state needs to be. But we're on this.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And I did forget to mention the Sustainability Committee's working groups. Thanks, Fred, for that reminder. So there's another way for people to get involved, whether you want to help organize the Global Climate Change Week that UTAS hosts and Fred and others are leading in that space. That happens October-ish, I think it was, and we are hosts of that for another year or two at least. And then we have a plastics minimization working group, like I talked about the Students for Sustainability working group. There's a whole bunch of ways to get involved, so do go on the website and have a look, or reach out to us, as I said, via email. And I'm just looking at the time, so I know we need
We're
to
about to hit time, I think.
Yeah. So what is there anything I missed, people? Because I was scrolling really quickly. If I've missed your question, throw it in again. Here's one from Sharon King. Now this, okay, I'm just reading it. As a distant rural student from Denali, it'd be great to have a forum monthly online to discuss ideas to start in our community so that they don't feel so alone in their endeavors. Now, Sharon, I'm hoping you're a Diploma of Sustainable Living student. You're obviously getting lots of encouragement through interaction with other students there. I guess there's Education for Sustainability Tasmania, which can be encouraged and used as a group to have those kind of conversations.
Actually, I finished the Sustainable Living and I'm now doing a double bachelor, Science, Sustainability and Education.
Excellent.
And I'm finding it difficult this year because I don't have the same engagement that I had during the diploma.
Yeah, okay, that's okay. That's a really interesting one. That's really good to know. I think if we reach out to Greg Jordan, who's the coordinator of the diploma and the certificate, and see what our sort of our after engagement is around these. And Rufus, we've had conversations around this. You know, when students finish, you know, a particular course or the degree that still want to be engaged and do things, I guess we need to kind of have that side of it to think a little bit about how do we keep them engaged to drive, especially the sustainability agenda, given that's close to my heart. Any thoughts you want to share? If anybody else is on the call, I see some other students are quite keen to connect with you, Sharon.
Excellent.
Yeah, perhaps in our last minute, Corey, there's a good little question here, which is actually a thing that's always bothered me a bit around this. Is there a concern that microplastics will come out of those recycled materials in the car parks into the environment? You've kind of tended to deep dive on this one. What do we know about that?
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one. So the product is called Recanofolt. So if you want to go online and have a look at that, my understanding is these materials are very much bound up in the asphalt complex or whatever. I'm not a chemist, but whatever that's called, the aggregation of all these materials. And it's not like separate fibers that come out of your polar fleece and stuff like that. So it's not going to get washed out in that way. So yeah, that's my understanding of talking with them as the product producers, and they're looking at their environmental product declarations. Happy to have you reach out to me and we can explore that one a little bit more together as well.
And I think just a quick one on Nigel. Yeah, that's a sad thing. Someone said their e-bike stolen. I think we're going to have to do more in that space. Nigel, thanks for calling that out. I do think that's going to be a challenge that we're going to need better solutions for. I think we're hitting time, Corey.
I think that is it. So you want to wrap it up, Rufus?
Well, really just to thank everyone on who's jumped in on this and the great kind of conversation that's kind of got going with these kind of questions and some terrific ideas, some which we can kind of take and kind of keep working on. But look, thank you to the whole team, Corey, your whole team, everyone who joined here today. It is these kind of conversations that are really important to us to keep moving our sustainability agenda forward. So look, thank you very much, everybody, and look forward to reconvening on this next year as we continue on the sustainability journey.
Thank you all. Thank you, Rufus.